So, Stephen Kenwright, thank you very much for joining us on this edition of Offline. Stephen, I can honestly say, is a true legend in the industry, someone that I've kind of worked with in the past. However, I haven't seen him in many years. So, Stephen, thank you very, very much.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Now, Stephen, the format is it's 10 questions I'm going to ask you, um, a mix of business and kind of personal questions. Some of them you'll have never been asked before. Some of them you might think that's a bit of a strange question. But I think the key is it's just to give people a bit of a feel in terms of the industry leaders. You know, a lot of them know you from your days at kind of Rise at 7 and Branded 3, but they might not necessarily know what you cook, what movies you like. So it's a kind of a nice personal way. So here we go. We're going to start with the very first question. It's going to be, how did you actually enter a career in digital?
I think like a lot of people entered by accident. I went to a comprehensive school, right? It wasn't particularly a great school. It was okay. And I didn't know what I wanted to do and not a lot of career advice around. So I was told if I do science at A level and go to university, then everything's just going to figure itself out. So that's kind of what I was going to do. Got an offer to do physics at university. Turns out that's just maths, not really me. So I did extra A levels, did English, went to uni specifically because I met someone doing a tour of some halls of residence at Sheffield who said, if you do English, you only go in 6 hours a week. So I literally changed the career path to do that. And then I did a master's degree in Shakespeare and Renaissance literature, which is
Yep.
mainly because I didn't know what I wanted to do still, 21 years old, 22 years old, coming out of university. I just didn't really know. So I did the master's degree, and when you do English, you end up as either a teacher or a copywriter. They're the two career paths that are open to you,
Yep.
basically.
Yep.
So I ended up doing some freelance copywriting for a small integrated agency in Manchester area, and by fortuitous circumstance, they got acquired just as I was graduating and offered me a full-time job. So that's how I ended up there. I was literally in an agency before I really knew what digital marketing
That,
was.
that, that is that is remarkable because for people that didn't know that, they know Stephen Kenwright, the person who's kind of set up with Carrie Rise at 7, the Branded 3 days, all the other stuff that you're doing, working with the agencies to help them grow their business. And yet to think that you've come in through that way is quite inspirational because there's a lot of people out there I don't think maybe have a clue, what they want to do. But
Mm.
you've kind of proved through that answer that actually you can move into something that is completely the opposite of what you've studied and still have massive success. But you're clearly an intelligent person because to have that background in science and English is clearly very, very interesting. So next question. Um, so how do you switch off? Because, with all the things that you've done in your career, and clearly you're a busy man. And so how does Stephen Kenwright de-stress? What do you do?
I have always needed something external to stop me working. I am one of those people that will work all the hours if I'm left with my own devices. So where we know each other from Brandon through is 40 miles from my house.
Yeah.
And I loved the commute. I loved being able to get in the car and drive for 45 minutes. I mean, it was all on a motorway, right? So it was not a particularly hard drive, but it's 45 minutes to get to work and from work, which just gave me time to decompress and not really think about it afterwards. And I think if we'd gone into the pandemic and I hadn't had my little boy Max just before the pandemic, I think I would have definitely suffered through that, going through 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m., and not getting off the laptop at that point. But because I had Max and my wife was on maternity leave, she did 9 solid hours looking after him. 6 o'clock, she's like, "Have you finished yet? Because I need some help." So I always had these things that kind of forced me to get away from the laptop. And I've always, especially with Rise at 7, we grew as fast as any agency did. And through the pandemic particularly, just had to learn to be able to do a lot in about 8 hours. So I've never, certainly not since my Branded 3 days, been a person that fires up a laptop after about 6 p.m.
Yeah.
Once I've done dinner, once I've done bedtime and everything, it doesn't come out again. Typically, I might be thinking about stuff, and that's the tough bit. So, the gym helps definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I remember you. I remember you. So it was 2014 when I last saw you, when I worked with you kind of briefly at Branded 3. A couple of observations, and I'm not just saying this because you're on camera. I always thought at the time, I think you were being promoted quite rapidly at that time. I remember like in the time I was there, you became the SEO director very quickly. I think you were very, very young at the time as well, which was like, wow, this guy's bloody clever and doing really well. You're very intelligent. I remember that. I remember spending a lot of time talking to you, but you did strike me as that kind of person that was always switched on. You were always thinking, which I think to be successful, clearly you have to be. But from listening to you, I mean, I've got two daughters, both of them are upstairs. I have to look after them during the summer holidays and run the events. And, I wait for my wife to come home. And I'm like, as soon as she walks in the door, I'm the reverse of you. It's like, right, okay, are you finished now? Can you look after the kids? Because I need to do something for me. I think having the kids and having that routine that you do is very, very important for you because to have longevity, um, you do need to have that balance of focusing on your work, but obviously having quality time with your kid, your children, because my two girls now are 16 and 9, and I take the young one to school every single day, and they just go like that.
Yeah.
They go quickly, so it's good to have that discipline. Okay, next question, Stephen, is what is your favorite podcast and book in 2025?
I have a few podcasts that I listen to quite consistently, and by consistent I mean like I've had the same podcasts on the queue for like 9 years now, pretty much. And that would be Two Bobs, which is David C. Baker at Blair Ends, talking about creative agency management, for want of a better term. And that's been going since about 2017. And I was listening to it then, and I've kind of re-listened to the whole catalog at least once or twice. So that's always been a favorite. Lucy Mann hosts Small Spark Theory, which is a really good podcast focused on, I've been primarily business development, but I think it's very relevant to agency management generally. And I think I've listened to that since the beginning as well. And, really lucky to go on Lucy's podcast last year. And I was thrilled with that because it was such a big part of my
Yeah, well done. Yeah,
um other than that, I think like I've always enjoyed Malcolm Gladwell. I've always enjoyed particularly like the most storytelling type of podcast, like Gladwell does a very good job of. Michael Lewis does a good job of that as well. And I think that's probably the kind of books I'm into nowadays as well, like historically. And I would certainly still say as well, like the most important business books that have really helped me will be things like The Challenger Customer by Matthew Dixon and Blair books and so on and so forth. Good to Great by Jim Collins will certainly be up there as well. But nowadays, I don't read a lot of those books. I love the
yeah,
one like the inside story of why some business did well or did badly. So stuff like there's a really good book at the beginning of the year called Character Limit: How Elon Musk Destroyed Twitter. And I loved that because I felt like I was there. I saw it in real time. I'm like, oh yes, that was stupid. So it's like really interesting to kind of get an expose of that. So I ended up chatting. I listened to loads of those, and I do mostly Audible as well, mostly audiobooks nowadays.
good. Very, very good. I mean, I personally, I used to read loads and loads of business books whenever I was a lot younger. Um, I'm not as I spoke to Amanda a few weeks ago, Amanda Wall. So again, I'm not going to give away my age, but my uncle, who was the most influential person in my life, he ran a number of businesses in Northern Ireland, and I wanted to get involved in nursing. So nursing was the direction I wanted to go when I was a young kid, and he kind of put me off it and said, business is where you want to go. And he kept giving me all these business books. So I remember him giving me one called, I think it's What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School, Mark H. McCormick, and loads of other amazing books. And I read them all and I thought they were fantastic. I was like a sponge up until the age of 24. But since then, I do like completely opposite. I like reading John Grisham,
Yeah,
crime novels,
yeah,
Michael Connolly. Um, but I don't. I recently listened to an audio book. It was Michael Manson, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. That was quite interesting for me because I find it hard. Sometimes I get invested in a problem or a situation, and I find it hard to let go. And actually listen to that, and it kind of put things in perspective a lot easier. It's like if you can't change a situation, you can't change a person. Fuck it, basically, just leave it and move on.
yeah.
I don't read business books anymore. I should actually. Right, next question. Fun fact about you. What is the craziest fun thing that no one knows about Stephen Kenwright?
I don't know about things that people don't know about me, but whenever I'm on the spot with something like this, and you have those kind of icebreaker situations when you're in a meeting people for the first time, I always say I've got a Blue Peter badge, because that's just something that people of our age remember. I don't know if Blue Peter's still a thing or not.
Have you still got the badge? Have you still got it?
I don't know if I do. When I got it, it was for a competition, and it came with a gold-plated medal for the Millennium. So it was 1999, 2000 when I won it. I don't have that anymore. I sold that on eBay, but I don't know if I still have the badge. Maybe my mum still has it somewhere.
Stephen, before you tell us why you got that badge, I think you should get that badge and you should wear it in every event, everywhere you're on the stage at. That is going to grab people's attention straight away.
I think that would be good. Yeah, I remember Rand Fishkin talking about how on a stage he always used to wear yellow trainers because it was like people could then recognize it. Maybe I could be the guy with the Blue Peter badge. Maybe it looks a bit too try hard though.
So how did you win the badge? What did you have to do?
It was a competition called The Day Something Happened, and it was basically Blue Peter celebrating the millennium and just stuff that had happened over the course of the last millennium, I guess. And I will have been 10, maybe 9. And so I drew a picture, well, watercolor picture, not just drawing actually, of the 1966 World Cup final. I hadn't seen the match, still haven't seen the match. I don't know any of the players in the match. I just
Oh,
drew
they should take that badge back from me for that.
I just drew a pitch, and I still probably could name 3 players in that match. I'm not a big football fan. I don't know to this point. I don't know why I chose to do that. It was just
Do you
it
have the
seemed
picture? You don't have you don't have the picture?
no. It's
Oh,
long since out of print, thankfully.
I'd love to have seen that. Actually, I could have, added it in just in the corner of this podcast. That's
Yeah,
interesting. So tell me, before we move on, do you still paint? Do you still do painting in your spare time?
not really. I mean, I really liked art at school, and then I remember when it came to doing my options. I don't know if kids still do options nowadays, but
I do, yeah.
I had to choose between art and IT, I think, ironically. And so I chose IT just because all my friends were, basically. So I ended up doing that. I don't think I really, it's one of those things I did well at school at, but yeah, I never kept it up.
Well, listen, my wife loves art. That's what she does. That's her passion. I mean, I don't know. So we went to Centre Parks a couple of years ago with the kids, and she took the girls to a little pottery class, and she painted. She kind of painted this. It only took about 15, 20 minutes, but she,
Amazing.
yeah, upstairs in our bedroom, she kind of converted our bedroom into a studio apartment, like for her art. So half the bedroom is a bedroom, and the other half is cluttered with all her painting and pictures, and it's lovely, but it's a mess. So I'm going to move on to the next question. Okay. This is going to be a hard one, I think, because you've done so much at a young age. What's your proudest professional achievement to date, if you had to pick one?
If I have to pick one, I think I often think about like the feelings at the time as being what made me proud. Like I could look back at a lot of things and say, yeah, I'm proud I did that. But the times when I remember being in the moment, going, yeah, I've done something interesting here. I'd say that the 2 that really spring to mind would be Search Leads, which was the conference that we ran at Branded 3 from sort of 2016. And the first one was great. We did about 450 people at the Royal Armouries in Leeds, and that was good. That was really solid. But then when the second year we moved to the First Direct Arena, and we had the massive stage that was literally where I think the first year we did it, Elton John had been there like the week before or something, and just standing on the stage with 1,000, and by the fourth year we did it like 3,000 people there, feeling like a proper rock star. I think that feels cool, and I remember at the time thinking, with the team, with Charlie and Frankie and the team who put that on, we'd done a really good one there. And then the other moment I think that always springs to mind would be at Rise at Seven, when we always articulated our vision as we wanted to be the first search agency to win a Lion at Cannes. And the reason we chose that as the way of talking about what we wanted to achieve was because it shows that we know where we're coming from. We're a search agency, but also we want to cross over and become recognized for our creativity on the same stage as the best creative agencies are. So it was kind of a shorthand for what we were trying to do, basically. But when you have a vision like that, you've got to walk the walk. So we got we got shortlisted for one of the entertainment Clios in 2021. So me and Carrie and a couple of other people flew out to Los Angeles. We literally were walking a Hollywood red carpet, and we've got photos. Instead of it's being like Adweek, it's like the Hollywood Reporter is the sponsor and stuff like that. And I remember James Hayward Brown, who was a marketing manager at Rise at the time and is now running Bold Imagination, right? He said he introduced me to the head of creative for Apple and said, "Oh, and you're going to go and just introduce us to the Universal's creative director over there." And it's just like, this is a different room. This is not the room that I'm used to being in. And I
Crazy.
remember looking around and just like the scale of the thing, I thinking, this is a different level. It feels like you're at a different level.
That's incredible. Absolutely incredible. I'm envious.
It was
Well
fun.
done on that. Right. Okay. So that leads in nicely, actually, to the very next question, which is, what's your favorite movie or movies of all time?
I would certainly say the Lord of the Rings trilogy is a favorite. I've been into that since I was young, but I would say genuinely the Matrix trilogy, specifically the first two, probably the second one, The Matrix Reloaded, is my favorite movie. And I've always thought of it as being a manual for business generally. Like it's such a weird little allegory in the film. But I mean, there's so many quotes that just sort of apply all the time in life. Like I always feel like I'm reciting it pretty consistently more than I'm
Can I embarrass myself? I have never watched from start to finish any of the Matrix films, but because you've mentioned that, and I know you've done it in the offline editorial, I will start to watch that now. Sorry to
it's
interrupt you there. I just want.
No, it's really good. I think like the general consensus is the third one was a bit of a letdown. Personally, I think it's fine. I think it's still really good. So I'm not like I'm one of those people that's like, when they've done the Lord of the Rings thing on Amazon and people are outraged about the quality of it, whatever. I'm like, I'd rather have more Lord of the Rings. That's good as far
Yeah,
as I'm concerned. I'd
Lord of
rather
the
have
Rings,
spent the
fantastic.
money.
Yeah, yeah,
I was happy with that. But the first film I think is an absolute masterpiece, and the second one's great, really great.
So, did you watch The Hobbit then? I assume you watched The Hobbit. What was your thoughts on that compared to Lord of the Rings? Was it
I
equally as
like
good?
that too. I like that too. I don't think it's as good, but I mean, when you've got something on quite a pedestal, I have an annual tradition where I will watch all three extended editions of The Hobbit and all three extended editions of Lord of the Rings. I generally do that over 2 days because that's
Gotcha.
about 24 hours of
Right,
viewing.
is this before you had your child? So you say to my wife, okay, you're taking care of the little one, and I'm away for 2 days in a room to watch all my movies.
That's true. Nowadays, it takes me 2 or 3 sittings to watch an average length film, but
Exactly. I feel that as well.
But
Yeah,
every so often there's like Rachel will be taking Max out somewhere for overnight, like they're going somewhere with Rachel's friends and their kids, and I'm like, today is the day. I will sit and I will do this for the day.
yeah. It's funny. It's funny you say that. I mean, me and my wife now, we've been together. Well, we've been together for 25 years. Whether it's a sign of getting older, but you're right. It's like even watching, like we're into the sewing bee at the minute, and there's a program called Destination X, which is on Wednesday night. Anyway, it's brilliant. It's only bloody 1 hour, right? So our routine is we sit down every night, 9 o'clock, kids are in bed, cup of tea, a biscuit. We watch one of these episodes. It's 1 hour. It still takes us 2, 3 nights to get through the whole bloody 1 hour of episode. It's like it's crazy, isn't it? It's like,
Does
anyway, we're gonna move on to the next question. As you can tell, this is an all business questions. Sometimes it's nice to talk about stuff like this. If there was one thing you could tell the younger version of yourself, um, what would it be?
think I think you often get given the advice that it helps to find your why or right the reason that you do what you do. And I probably kind of muddled through for a long part of my career, and I've had various reasons for doing it. And early on, my wife Rachel, she had a job she hated, and I wanted to progress quickly enough that I had enough money that she could just quit. Right, so that was a why. And then I won't say lost my way a little bit, but I didn't really have any particular thing other than I just really like doing it. And then I think in about 2 years ago, after I'd exited Rise at Seven, and I was during my sort of time off and the beginning of my time at Ride Shotgun, I got asked. by Charlie Whitworth to help him with the Hive Manchester
Yeah.
conference.
Yeah.
And I remember vividly sat outside that conference, outside New Century in Manchester, at a table with literally 19 people who have worked for me previously in different places. So a whole load of Rise at 7 people, some Branded 3 people, a few others as well, right? Who were willing to sit with me and have a beer. And I've thought, actually, that's what I want. I want to, when I'm working with someone, when I'm working for someone, alongside someone, if at the end of that they are willing to sit with me and have a drink, have a meal, and generally feel like I've made their lives better, I'm happy with that. So if I think about like your question of what would I tell my younger self, I would tell my younger self that's worthwhile because I could think of a couple of times. I'm somewhat happy to say probably only 2 or 3 times where I haven't done the best job for someone, and I would have loved to have been reminded a little bit earlier on that that's actually probably the priority. And all jobs are temporary. You don't need to do the thing the PLC wants you to do if it feels like it compromises who you are and that kind of thing. I think that's the advice I would give.
I mentioned this to Amanda a few weeks ago. Have you ever went into like colleges and universities and given talks to students? Because I think it'd be absolutely riveting. If I was an English student or a history student or a science student, and maybe somewhere along the lines, you know, I'm thinking actually I don't really want to be doing this, but I don't really know what I want to do. You sometimes, without having spoken to someone like you might think, oh my goodness, my life's over. I've wasted all this time, all this money studying this degree. I'm never going to get into digital marketing, or I'm never going to get into this. Have you ever done that?
Yeah, I did. I did student mentoring at Sheffield Hallam University for quite a few years, and as part of that relationship with Hallam, where I went actually and did my degree and my postgrad, I've done a couple of lectures, and it's
Great,
been very rewarding, definitely.
great, great. Okay, I'm just checking to see if I've missed any questions. We have a few more to go now. So, okay, this one's a tough one, I think. I'm sure AI may come into the equation on this. What's the biggest opportunity for digital marketers in 25, 26? There's obviously so much happening at the minute with AI, with search marketing, everything. But if you could say for the next 12 months at least, what would be the biggest opportunity presents itself?
So I think, if I could be controversial for a second, AI is not the biggest opportunity because I don't think anyone really knows what the opportunity is. They know it's there, they know it's a thing, but I don't think there are more than a couple of agencies I've spoken to that have a real direction. We're going to do this. This is the plan. And even if they do, it's a good guess. It's not like that's absolutely the way things are going to go, etc. So I think it's something that you've got to have your eye on. I think you've got to be aware of it, and you've got to have the ability, and by that I mean the mechanism, the forum within the management team to talk about it and keep abreast of what you need to do with it. But right now, I think like the agency that goes all in on AI is probably actually going to cause themselves some problems. I would say the biggest single opportunity for digital marketers right now is social. And the reason I say that is because social media has been a thing for a long time. When we were together, working together at Brand 3, it was quite new, really. And it was still, the conversation was how do we get people to take social media seriously? And at some point during that 10 years since then, social media gets more budget than everything else combined now. And no one really talks about that bit anymore. But what people haven't really clocked, I don't think, is when people are so caught up with how ChatGPT and Gemini and other AI and all the other LLM bots, etc., are kind of taking a lot of traffic away and a lot of attention away from Google. A lot of attention has already gone. Like it's on YouTube first and foremost, more than anywhere else. YouTube is the biggest single search channel, the biggest.
Can I reinforce that? So basically, I'm going to rewind back to 2018. I went through a phase of purchasing fragrances. Okay, something I've never done, something I've never done before. Um, my wife was going mad. She was like, "Going, why have you got 35 bottles of expensive fragrances upstairs in our room, of which you never really use any of them?" And it was YouTube, specifically an influencer at the time called Jeremy Fragrance. And I just got captivated by everything about YouTube and all these guys and running. And obviously, I'm into running. So anything that I have spent a lot of money on in the last 6 years has ultimately come down to watching stuff on YouTube.
Hmm.
For me, that channel is my one. But you're right. Very rarely would I go to Google specifically to find something now. If I want to find a solution to a problem, I'll YouTube. I went to the doctor's last week and I had a little bit of an infection in my eye. And YouTube has given me so much information and products and how to treat it. So there's an example of it's got nothing to do with AI, it's got nothing to do with Google search. It's just social is massive, obviously.
But what's really interesting is we're talking about informational search, right? We're talking about I want to find out how to do a thing, and that's what's kind of been eaten up in the last few years. The transactional stuff arguably has been gone a long time because if you think about like, okay, where do you go to make a purchase? For 10 years, it's been Amazon. And where do you go to buy a car? Well, for 10 years, it's been Auto Trader. Cheap flights, it's Skyscanner. All of these micro search engines, these specialized search engines, eBay would be a great example. There's loads of them in different sectors. Indeed, for jobs, there's just one in every sector now, where actually a lot of people are using search engines like Google to find the specialist search engine because that's where all the stuff is. Like the biggest, arguably the biggest social winner of the last year or 2 years has been Reddit, which is people are using Google to search Reddit basically because Reddit search is very good. So they're just using the function of Google rather than the actual answers that Google provides nowadays. That's a massive generalization, of course, and there is a generation of people that are going to be finding it hard to wean off Google. But I think Rise at Seven was quite eye opening because the people who were coming through the ranks at Rise at Seven, because it was so predominantly Gen Z, people just weren't even used to Google, right? The idea of that you can TikTok stuff that we're trying to get our heads around generally is like, well, actually they'd always done that. That had been the thing forever. They hadn't been to Google to do that stuff since they were at school. So yeah, I think generationally there's something going on there.
Yeah. I think James Brockbank is doing a talk next month at Digital Superchats
Amazing.
where it's all about that. It's all about social brand signals, different things. So it's going to be an interesting talk that he does. Okay, this one, I think we've got two last questions. I think I missed one previously, which I'm going to go back to. It is an inspirational quote. Yeah. So when times get really tough, right, and you might not have anything, I have loads of little things that I draw on personally. What inspirational quotes or little mantras or little affirmations do you kind of sometimes repeat a few times to say, no, just to keep you focused in that moment? Do you have any good ones?
I've got three. One I didn't put in the editorial, and that is from Branded 3 Days. We had and Edit Days particularly. We had Tommy Schaff come on board as a sales coach via Solstice, the American bit of the business. And Tommy had this mantra that he instilled in us to talk to ourselves about every single time we go into a meeting, which was before you go in, repeat to yourself, I'm a difference maker, meeting with difference makers for the purpose of making a difference. And it's basically a reminder of like, what are we going to do here? When we're going to go and talk to this client, what difference are we trying to make? Because if the answer is there isn't one, then why are we doing it? And I've definitely been in situations since then where I've been in jobs like, I'm not going to make a difference here. So I'll leave, and I found that to be really genuinely just something that's stuck with me to the point where I can actually use it to make decisions in my life. The other two that I'll mention, there's one from Matthew Crawford, which I found quoted by Cal Newport in I think his book's called Digital Detox, but it's about basically like unplugging a bit from mobile phones, and it's talking about how social media is engineered for dopamine hits and it's not good for you and all that kind of thing, which we know. Even though we've just said social media is a massive opportunity for marketing,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
human beings, it's a net negative. Let's ignore that fact for a sec. But Matthew Crawford in his book said, boasting is what a boy does because he's got no real effect in the world, but the tradesman must reckon with the infallible judgment of reality where one's failures or shortcomings cannot be interpreted away. And I realized that's quite wordy, but what that meant when I read it, what I felt like, I've always been in the social media environment where you've got a lot of people posting all the time. And for me, it means I'd rather just go, look at that, look what I've done. I don't need to boast. So just look at that. I think when you're scrutinized and you can just say, here are the facts. This is have a look at that thing.
Yeah.
I've always felt really good about that. And I've always felt like even Branded 3 would be a really good example of this. Like, I did a lot of talks, as you know, while I
Yeah,
was at Branded 3.
yeah.
I don't think I ever once introduced myself on stage because I felt like I could go on to stage and say, I work for Branded 3 and you should know what that means. Like, this is a search conference and that is Branded 3. And so I think
That's interesting because I think I heard someone saying, let people find out your greatness through the mouths of others and not from you. Um,
absolutely.
I haven't introduced you properly, and I think the reason I didn't introduce you properly is because we all know who Stephen Kenwright is, and at the end of the day, that's not because you went out and, as you've said, hi, I'm Stephen Kenwright. This is what I've done. It's because you're well known for the results. I know you and Carrie at Rise at Seven, but you've obviously achieved results that everybody can look at. Those are interesting ones. Now, I think we're into the last question. I'm scrolling down the editorial. This is a nice one, actually. What's your favorite meal to cook? Okay, so let's say this can be either for just you and your wife or the family, but what is the kind of favorite meal that you like to cook at home?
We do meal planning and we eat off Instagram, right? So we have recipes saved on Instagram, and we actually have a couple of cookbooks, which are literally just cookbooks from people we follow on Instagram. So it's still Insta. And there's a recipe for peanut noodles that we have on the rotation every single week. And I wanted to mention this one for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because it's really easy. Like, it's literally peanut butter, some sriracha, some soy sauce, stick some noodles in it, basically, and that's kind of all there is to it. Stick some chicken in it. But um, I specifically use Mother Nutter, which is Thierry and Gutagore's peanut butter. And Thierry is a former Rise at Seven employee who is into all sorts of things, right? There's not many things that man doesn't flog. But I've always made a point of when I've been working with someone previously, if I can support them in some way, whether it's buying Thierry's peanut butter or the number of messages I've had, sadly, over the last couple of months of, can you help me find a job? Like, I always make a point of trying to go out of my way and hook them up, basically. So that recipes are really interesting because it's a good recipe. It's really easy. We both like it. We can make it for 2, 3 days in a row that we can have for lunch and everything, and it warms up in a microwave just fine. It's
So
always
what can we buy this peanut butter? Because I just use some pot peanut butter. Where can we get this special stuff?
so you can get it on his website, which is Mother Nutter. I think it's mothernutter.co.uk. I think you can get it in Selfridges as well. What is special about it? So it's not got a lot of like palm oil. It's not got palm oil, and it's not got a lot of
Yeah,
nasties in it.
yeah.
They do. I think he's got a business partner in it. Some really interesting flavors. My absolute favorite, and we are in the season, is a pumpkin spice one. He does pumpkin spice peanut butter, and it is absolutely banging.
Hey, can I ask you to do something? So obviously this is not affiliated in any way. We've had Terry on. I've had him on doing a talk. I think he was a Journey Further
Yeah,
at the time. A really fascinating chap. Send me the links to the peanut butter or the recipes. I'll certainly include them. The podcast, by the way, is going to be available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. So what I'll do is I'll include in the descriptions of all those podcasts the link to this stuff because that's really interesting.
will do.
Okay. I think that's everything. I mean, thanks very much. I mean, I know it took a little bit longer, but it was a fascinating conversation. Thanks very much, Stephen, for getting involved. As I say, if there's anything in the last minute you want to say, a plug, an announcement, feel free.
If I could plug something, I write a weekly newsletter on stephenkenwright.co.uk. You follow me on LinkedIn and I'll share it every week as well. It is free, it is practical, actionable, helpful for people who run agencies or who would like to run agencies. So you should subscribe to that. That's what I would like to plug.
Well, again, Stephen, what I'll do is I'll make sure I'll put that link on all these kind of podcast channels as well. But listen, I know you're a busy man. Thank you very, very much for taking part, and I'll certainly be subscribing to your newsletter. Same
Thanks.
mate. Cheers,
See you
all the
soon.
best. Bye
Bye.
bye. Bye.